Welcome to Taiwan Report News Brief, news and analysis from Taiwan. I'm Donovan Smith. Up today in the show, Hao Po-chun has passed away. Johnny Chiang has met with Wu Zihuai. A new big startup fund is going to kick off. Men are rape victims too. Big data to beat wind. Audrey Tang touts blockchain. Taiwan to allow more overseas workers in for guest construction projects. A very odd situation is brewing over the head of the National Police Agency. Most Taiwanese want ROC off the passports. Burger King China attacks Burger King Taiwan. And WHO finally utters the word Taiwan after a PR disaster. But up first, coronavirus news. On Monday, Taiwan reported 8 new COVID-19 infections and another 2 deaths, bringing its total number of cases to 306 and its fatalities to 5. In Focus Taiwan, Central Epidemic Command Center plans social distancing regulations. The Central Epidemic Command Center is considering formulating laws and regulations to enforce social distancing between people in public spaces to halt the spread of the COVID-19 coronavirus, the Command Center's chief said Sunday. At the daily press conference, Health Minister Chen Shizhong, who also heads the CECC, said the command center is currently formulating the most efficient way to facilitate social distancing that will reduce the spread of acute respiratory disease. We take social distancing seriously, and we are currently in talks about how to implement it, he said. However, to enforce such social distancing will involve many laws and regulations that will need to be thoroughly discussed to make sure it fits the purpose of virus prevention. Now, what we don't know at this point is, will this include a basic lockdown like is going on in many places in the United States where people are working from home, they're no longer allowed to go to restaurants, that sort of thing. As I'm sure you know here in Taiwan, if you're here, that right now things are fairly normal. The nightclubs are down, the big events are down, but people can still go to restaurants, go to the office, that sort of thing. That they're considering this means that they may be worried about a big new outbreak. That's concerning. Continuing on in Focus Taiwan, more masks, easier access coming in April under rationing program. Taiwan's mask rationing system will see significant changes in mid-April that will give local residents easier access to more surgical masks under the country's mask rationing system. Starting on April 9th, residents will have access to 9 masks for adults every 14 days, up from 3 per week at present, while the quota for children's masks will remain at 10 every 2 weeks. Now, they also say here, also starting April 9th, people can send up to 30 masks every 2 months by mail to their first or second degree relatives living in foreign countries. He explained that the new measure will be instituted out of concern that overseas Taiwanese may need masks but have none to use. Foreign nationals will not be allowed to do this, however, because the government has no way of confirming who their relatives within a second degree are. The only exception would be if the relative was a Taiwan national. Also in Focus Taiwan, former Premier Hao Po-chun dies at 100. Now, I've seen various press reports locally that had him at 101 or 102. But regardless, he was an older man. Now, he was previously a premier. He was also a general, and he was at a very critical point. Right when Li Denghui took over after Zheng Jingguo died, he was appointed premier essentially because, of course, Li Denghui was native Taiwanese, and there was a lot of concern within the KMT. Now, most people viewed Li Denghui at the time as a weak nobody, but he wanted to make moves toward a more democratic opening. At least that's what we think with hindsight now. So, but he had to pacify and keep the deep blue, very authoritarian elements within the KMT calm. So he appointed him as the premier. When he was premier, he launched a series of crackdowns against crime, social order, foreigners, all kinds of things. He later was touted as the spiritual leader or inspiration for the new party, and he did run for vice president at one point. Johnny Chiang has met with Wu Zihuai. As we've been covering, he has been threatening him to try and keep him to quiet down. Now, if you see this picture here, this is in Now News. You can see Johnny Chiang looks quite happy, and Wu Zihuai is looking down to the left, looking very uncomfortable. Now, they said that they had a meeting and they reached a consensus between the two of them. And they announced that in facing the DPP's evil machinations, we need to be careful that we will not be labeled as being pro-China or pro-red, or as they put it here in Chinese, smeared with a red hat. Now, from the description in the article, looks like everything went well, they got along well, everything's happy. We'll see. Obviously, Johnny Chiang is trying to proactively keep Wu Zihuai from continuing to damage the image of the party. In Forbes, YouTube CoFounder teams up with former lawmaker to launch $100 million plus Taiwan Tech Fund. A YouTube CoFounder is looking to shake up Taiwan's startup ecosystem with a $100 million plus fund focused on helping local startups expand abroad. Now, what doesn't say here if that's US dollars or not, I'm going to assume that it is. Taiwan-born Steve Chen, who co-founded the video platform YouTube with two former PayPal colleagues, will launch the fund with former Taiwanese lawmaker Jason Xu. The fund, which is not yet named, should be running by mid-year, says Xu. Chen, who was an entrepreneur in residence at Google Ventures, will help the fund by putting his name and international expertise behind the selected startups. The fund will be worth between 100 and 150 million, says Xu, and will select no more than 10 companies, including 2 in medicine and artificial intelligence. They both plan to kick in some money, but they didn't specify the amounts. Now, it says here, unlike government funds, Chen and Xu's fund will focus on local startups in Taiwan looking to expand abroad. We are taking a forensic review of Taiwan's startup ecosystem to take the startups global, says Xu. Government funds give money, but they don't build companies into unicorns, which are startups valued at more than 1 billion, notes Xu. They are feeding them candies so they get sugar highs. And once the sugar high passes, they realize their stomach is empty. Now, by the way, Jason Xu is a former KMT lawmaker who founded the Taipei TEDx. He was one of a very interesting character within the KMT. He, for example, supported marriage equality and things like that. He's a big proponent of blockchain technology. But then the party dropped him in the last election. They kicked him off the party list, and that was that. Comics Confession, and this is Focus Taiwan. Comics Confession prompts expert to note males can be rape victims. An expert specialized in helping victims of sexual abuse called on the public Sunday to take the issue of male rape seriously after a Taiwanese comedian and a Taipei city councilor both recently shared their experiences of being rape victims when they were young. So essentially what's happened here is that two men, it started off with Brian Zeng, and this is Zeng Bo, and he's the host of the Late Late Show, which I'm a big fan of. I watch it a lot. You can find it on YouTube. And he disclosed last week that he was a victim of rape multiple times during his days in elementary and high school. He didn't elaborate whether the assailants were men or women and did not provide any details on the assaults. Now, Tseng also said that as a victim of rape, he believes one can let go of the painful past and move on. Showing support for Tseng, Taipei City Councilor Chiu Wei-chie, also known as Froggy, disclosed Saturday he too was a victim of rape when he was only 10 years old in elementary school. Chiu said on Facebook that the incident took place at a hospital and that his attacker was a man at least 10 years older than him. So it says, anyway, so the head of Taiwan's Garden of Hope Foundation said that due to local gender stereotyping, people tend to see men as strong and therefore not subject to rape or sexual violence. Rape and sexual violence are not issues that only affect women, Wang said. Now, she goes on to say that the proportion of men who've been reporting sexual assault have increased significantly. According to Ministry of Health and Welfare numbers, only about 3 to 5% of reported sexual assault victims were male 10 years ago. The percentage of reported cases has increased to around 10% in 2019. To meet increasing demand, Wang said her foundation has set up a hotline for men seeking counseling. Depending on how you define it, I may well have been raped as well. Moving on, Focus Taiwan. Taiwan applies big data to planning new building standards. The government has applied big data in a study that will be used as a basis for revising building standards to improve the strength of structures in Taiwan to withstand strong winds. Now, the article explains a fair bit about that. The part that jumped out at me I thought was interesting I'd like to share with you. Taiwan is hit by an average of 3.6 typhoons every year, concentrated from July to September. Between 1958 and 2017, 221,000 houses were damaged and 119,000 were completely destroyed by typhoons. So the publication here is Decrypt. And the headline is, if I can find it, Taiwan's digital minister says blockchain is a top priority. Taiwan is still figuring out how to do democracy. The country's digital minister, Audrey Tong, told Decrypt Taiwan's democratic era only started after the country came out of martial law in the 90s. Its first election was in 96, making its constitution one of the first written in the internet era. So the Chang, the 38-year-old radical who's leading Taiwan's drive for technological innovation and governance, said that researching how blockchain can improve governance is a top priority. Ledgers, Tong prefers the term to blockchain, are very promising. They are a cheap way to build accountability and some sort of legitimacy across sectors, she said, which makes them particularly useful for governance. A team was selected to work on a cheap solar-powered device that measures water pollutants and logs its findings on blockchain. The water box tries to solve a governance problem because industrial plants and farmlands can get their electricity and water cut if people realize they're actually polluting the waterways downstream. Quote, "It's not like all the illegal industrial plants will register themselves," she pointed out. Anyone who has a stake in proving they have clean water can buy a bunch of the devices and stick them in the water. If an industrial plant finds itself accused of polluting the water, they can refer to a shared immutable ledger to absolve themselves. This, said Tong, is key to getting a cross-sectoral buy-in so that people can live with each other, contributing to the same shared reliable database without actually worrying too much about adversarial scenarios where people can modify their numbers. The water project is currently a proof of concept, and a similar project which measures air quality is already up and running. Again, Focus Taiwan. Taiwan to ease restrictions on hiring migrant construction workers. The government is revising regulations to remove one of the main thresholds for contractors of public construction projects to hire migrant workers, with the new rules likely to come into effect in early April, according to the Ministry of Labor. Essentially, what they're doing is there was previously the construction project on a government case needed to be 10 billion NT before you could hire these foreign workers. However, companies have been saying that recently, in recent years, most of the projects have been under 10 billion. So they expect that they're going to add several thousand new migrant workers. They say specifically an additional 1,382 migrant workers are expected to be able to enter the public construction sector, according to the Public Construction Commission. Okay, I don't know where to go with this here. It's a little bit confusing. The Taipei Times, Su chides ministry over NPA Row. Premier Su Zhensang yesterday said that the public is likely unimpressed with the Minister of Interior Xu Guoyong on Friday, asking prosecutors to investigate the National Police Agency Director General Chen Jiaqin over 3 promotions he approved. Su called on Chen to continue serving in his position steadfastly while waiting for the judiciary to prove his innocence. So, essentially what's been going on here is that the Ministry of Interior, headed by Xu, said that Chen, the head of the NPA, the police agency, unduly expedited the promotions of three candidates. Now, the ministry, in its complaint, accused Chen of instructing Chang to abet the 3 in writing false reports about their positions and the exchanges they had as officers to allegedly help them secure promotions to police officer rank 1, characterized by 2 bars and 4 stars, which they would otherwise have had to wait for another 5 to 6 years to attain. Although the prosecutor's office later on Friday rejected the case, citing procedural flaws, it is still under investigation by the Control Yuan and the Agency Against Corruption. The incident has sparked widespread speculation of a power struggle between Chen and Xu over the NPA's staffing. Asked about the issue, Chen said that all of his actions have been completely legitimate and would withstand public scrutiny. Su said he was dismayed by the incident, adding that the public is likely confused and unimpressed by the kerfuffle, especially amid fears over COVID-19. Su added that the ministry did not inform his aide of the matter until after 8 p.m. on Friday. Xu should have spoken to him if he believed that Chen was unfit for the job, so that he could replace or transfer Chen, Su said, but added that Xu has never spoken to him about the issue. Xu claimed to have been too busy to report on the matter, Su said, only to text him the following day saying that he was reticent over the case because he did not want it to follow a direction similar to 2013's Legislative Yuan wiretapping case. So, essentially what's going on here is Su appears to be taking Chen's side, the head of the police, against the Ministry of the Interior, which of course is over the NPA. I don't really know what's going on there. Taipei Times, majority wants passports remade to end confusion. More than 70% of Taiwanese in a poll have said that the government should remove the nation's English-language name Republic of China from the cover of the nation's passports and only use Taiwan as the nation's English name so that foreign immigration officials would not mistake Taiwanese travelers for Chinese nationals, a poll showed. Now, the poll was by the New Power Party. And, of course, recently, with the coronavirus outbreak, a lot of people have been concerned about Taiwanese being confused with Chinese. In Taiwan news, Burger King Taiwan draws ire from China over Wuhan virus claim. Burger King Taiwan has come under fire from both sides of the Taiwan Strait for labeling the coronavirus as the Wuhan virus in a Facebook post before changing it to COVID-19. The fast food chain in Taiwan used the term Wuhan virus on a March 25th post to promote its products, which enraged its Chinese counterpart. Despite the restaurants being operated by different franchises in Taiwan and China, Burger King China issued a statement Sunday grilling Burger King Taiwan for what it called irresponsible remarks. Taiwan news again. WHO leader axed from website after Taiwan gaffe. Bruce Aylward, Assistant Director General of the World Health Organization, has disappeared among the list of leaders on the organization's website a day after awkwardly refusing to answer a question about Taiwan's inclusion in the UN agency. Now, essentially, there was an interview. We talked a little bit about it on Current Affairs Taiwan. It's been all over the internet. From RTHK, reporter asked Bruce Aylward about Taiwan's membership. He was very rude, dodged the question, and hung up on her at one point. And the WHO says following Taiwan virus report... Okay, let's try it again. U.S. News and World Report. WHO says following Taiwan virus response closely after complaints. Now, there's been a lot of international attention to the WHO's response or handling of Taiwan. Now, what's interesting is in this, that they actually used, their spokesperson said, use the word Taiwanese to describe the people. Taiwan gets access to information under the international health regulations, and 2 Taiwanese health experts took part in a WHO organized forum last month, blah, 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 blah. The interesting thing is they actually referred to Taiwan, not Taipei and environs, and some of the other bizarre formulations they've been using. All right, the news is ongoing. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, and look forward to seeing you again then.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at report.tw.
哎呦，就是那个台湾狗啦，最喜欢我的台湾狗了。